So we can call class a template or a blueprint, something that you can model after. That's what a classification is. How would you distinguish between a class and an object? Class versus an object. And try to use more English and less Java-like definitions.
Wouldn't an object be like much more specific, like instance?
It's more specific implementation of the template. Yep. Welcome, Jack. I marked you present. So it just happens to be so last week. Some people showed up in my room for a different class, but that's fine. So anyway, so object is an instance or an occurrence or a particular implementation of the main idea that the class represents. Okay. What is the difference between an object-oriented programming and procedure-oriented programming?
Procedure-oriented programming is really based on order of commands, and object-oriented programming is kind of like a wrapper around procedural programming, where we have virtual objects that may align with real objects or may resemble them.
Okay. So procedure-oriented programming pretty much translate the business processes into solutions and link them with each other as free-floating elements, maybe through a menu system or some kind of a controller procedure, but they're not wrapped around anything else. On the contrary, the object-oriented programming is more aligned with the real-world objects. So that's where they are different from the way they're coded. So for example, in real world, we do have processes, but we do have individuals that act the ones that processes work with. So that's why object-oriented programming packages everything inside an object, and from there, everything is derived. What do we mean by when we say Java is architecturally neutral? Architecturally neutral.
It can run on any operating system or machine.
Right. So when you write the source code of Java, what is the file extension of the file?
In a .java file?
.java file, okay. When you compile the Java source code, what do you get out of it? What is the end result of that source code?
Bytecode?
Bytecode, okay. What is the file extension of the bytecode file?
Is it .class?
.class, okay. If you look at the Java folder structure, you have a Java project in which you have folders in which files are placed. So your source code goes in which folder and your bytecode goes in which folder? Your source code goes in the SRC folder and your bytecode goes in the bin folder. Yeah, so those are the two folders, right? Okay, so you have your bytecode and you want to run your bytecode. So who runs the bytecode?
Like what program? That Eclipse program that we use?
Eclipse is just an IDE, integrated development environment. You know, you could have other IDEs But what is that component of Java that runs the bytecode?
Compiler?
Compiler converts your source code to bytecode. That's what and the compiler's job is done after that.
Is it the JVM?
That thing runs through the JVM or inside the JVM, but JVM is just an environment
Oh,
which
okay.
allow you to run bytecode on the native operating system without worrying about where the bytecode was produced. The bytecode could have been produced by any operating system, but JVM makes the underlying operating system understand the bytecode. So what does JVM uses when it is running the bytecode?
A Java interpreter?
Java interpreter, right? So Java language is first compile and then interpreted. So anyway, so Java program can be used to create desktop application, can be used to create mobile application, can be used to create server level application. What are the three letters that you would use for a Java desktop application?
.exe.
No, I mean, like, what do you call that variation of Java that is used for desktop application development? That would be Java Standard Edition, JSE, Java Standard Edition. And what would you call the variation of Java that you would use for server-side application development? That'll be JEE, Java Enterprise Edition. And what do you use, which variation of Java do you use for mobile application development? That's Java Micro Edition, JME. And the most popular Java Micro Edition implementation is the Android platform. Okay, so there are three variations of Java: JSE, Java Standard Edition; JME, Java Micro Edition; and JEE, Java Enterprise Edition. In spring, you learn about Standard Edition. In fall, you learn about the other two. Okay. In the Java programming language, when we create a Java project and we create a class within the project, is it possible to give your class a different name than the name of the file?
They have to be the same.
They have to be the same. What about, is it like case sensitive? I can call my program with a lowercase p, program1, and I can call my file program1 with an uppercase p. Will be fine with that?
It's case sensitive.
It is case sensitive. Okay. Within my program, in order for my program to run, what should it include?
A public static void main.
A public static void main. Okay. And what is the purpose of main? Why do we have main?
It's a starting spot.
Right, exactly. So your interpreter is looking how to start executing, and that's your starting. Okay. So when you are running a main, what is main? Which programming construct does main falls under? Which programming construct does main falls under? Is it a linear construct? Is it a conditional construct? Is it an iterative construct, or what is it? What are the 4 programming constructs you guys learn in Intro to Programming? You learn about sequential or linear instruction sets, which is writing any program where instructions run 1, 2, 3, 4 all the time. You learn about conditional, where you have if condition and you have switch case. You learn about iteration, where you have loop. What is the last programming construct, other than these 3 that you learn in Intro to Programming?
I know we had sequence, selection, and repetition.
Mm-hmm.
There's a 4th?
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember the 4th. I just remember the 3.
Sequence, selection,
Selection,
iteration.
repetition.
It is called, I'm going to write in the chat so that you can see its spelling.
Is it, I kind of want to cut you off. Is it iterate? No, never mind. I was completely wrong.
It is called modularization.
Oh. Yeah, we learned it last week.
So you learn it, you probably did not knew the name of it. This is all the functions, value returning, non-value returning fall under the modularization construct. So in programming constructs, functions and procedures are called modules. So main falls under the modularization construct. It is a function that needs to be called, and it gets called by the system. When you call main, is it value returning or non-value returning?
It's non-value returning
And how do you know?
because it says void in the constructor.
Okay. And the word void, what kind of word is that in Java language?
Is it a return type?
Void
Yeah.
is categorized generally as what kind of word? It would be categorized in the same category that you would have the word public or static.
Like
What are-
keyword?
These are keywords, right?
Okay.
Keywords, okay? The word public is a subcategory of keyword. And what is that subcategory of keywords that public actually gets categorized under? You know, public, private, protected. What are these things called? These are called the access types or the modifiers. Yes. And then what is it inside the parentheses of main? What do you call that?
Parameters?
Parameters, okay? And a parameter must have 2 things. What are those 2 things that a parameter must have?
Is it a data type and a value?
Data type and a
Name?
name, right? Yeah, okay. That is very important for today's class because today our focus is to learn about modularization in Java without object-oriented programming. So we're not going to be doing classes yet, but we'll be focusing mainly on modularization. So pretty much we'll be treating Java like a procedure-oriented programming language today. So main has 1 parameter. What is the data type of that parameter?
It's a string.
String, okay. And what do you put right after the word string?
It's
Are
the 2 brackets for
it's
array.
the array
Right,
and then
Right, right. 2 square
args.
brackets for array, and then you put the name of the array called args. Okay. String. What kind of data type is string?
Character?
So again?
Is that character?
No, I'm talking about how does Java categorizes string?
Oh,
It's a class.
It's a class, but classes are categorized as what? And when it comes to data types, classes
A-
are categorized as
A primitive data type?
classes are not primitive. Yeah.
They're objects, right?
They are. What is the Java's terminology for class data type? If a data type is not a class, then it is called primitive, which is int, double, float, byte, long, char. All of these are primitive types. They represent a single value. But if the data type is a class, what do you call it?
Reference?
Reference type. Okay, reference versus primitive type. How many data types are there in primitive section of Java?
Eight.
Ocho.
Eight. What are they?
Boolean, byte, character, short, integer, long, float, and double.
Eight.
Basics.
Out of all these data types, which one is considered to be the highest order type? All the number types, I'm talking. In the number types, the highest order type.
Like size wise, like
Yeah, I mean,
so
size,
a double has like
double.
64 bits,
Double.
right?
that's double,
Okay.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So double is of the most highest order type, and that is extremely important when you're learning about the unifying type concept. What is unifying type?
Hmm.
That was the last topic towards the end of the chapter 2. Unifying type. Unifying type talks about that when you have mixed type operations, the data type of the final answer will be the highest order type. So you unify the final answer to one type. So if you add an integer and a short, since integer is a higher order than short because of the size, the answer will be of type integer. If you add an integer and a float, the answer will be a float. If you add a float and a double, the answer will be a double. If you add an int, short, byte, long, float, double, the answer will be double. So it all mixed type operations, the order type will determine the final answer's type. When you declare a variable and you do not assign it a value, what is the value inside the variable? Is it garbage or is it some default value?
Is it null?
No.
For numbers or characters?
Yeah, now that is a good question, right? If it's a number,
Uh, the default value would be 0, right?
0. Okay. What is
Oh.
the default for character?
Null?
Yeah,
No.
null.
What is the default for Boolean?
False.
False. Okay. Not talking about Java, but talking in general. How many data types do we have in programming? The core data types. Based on which all other data types are created. I'm not
Still the
talking
eight,
about
right?
binaries though. I'm not talking about binary numbers. I'm just talking in terms of the core data types. Yes, Alvin.
It's still 8, right? Or is
No.
there more than 8?
No, 8 is too high.
Oh wow. Okay.
Jack, you were saying something?
It's 4.
No, I was thinking.
Somebody else was saying something?
4? I'm gonna throw numbers out there.
Is it 5?
Way high.
Way high. Okay.
This
One and
number is way
3/4.
high. 5 is higher than the actual core types.
3.
Still higher.
It's got to be 1 then.
No, lower. 2. There are only two data types on which all other data types are based. Can you guess what 2 data types are the founding types for all types?
Character.
Eh,
String.
integer and float. These are the 2 data types on which all other data types are created. And that, like, how is it possible? Think about it. When you type the letter A on the keyboard, what goes to the computer? If it's an uppercase A.
Is it ASCII?
It,
Like an
yeah,
ASCII code? Yeah.
yeah. It's what are ASCII codes?
Is it just like it's just like numbers, right? Like
Yeah,
0, 5, 4.
Yeah, they're all integers. So character is not even a data type. If you go back to the old documentations of 60s and 70s, there isn't a data type called character. It's integer, and integer has a subtype called character. That's why even in Java, if you cast a number into a character type, you will get a character. If you cast 65 to a CHAR type, you will get an A. If you cast A to an integer type, you will get 65. So character is not really a data type. All strings are characters. So basically strings are integers. It's a bunch of integers put together. What is Boolean? What is Boolean?
Boolean would just be like a 0 or a 1, right? To
Right.
represent yes, like true or false.
So what is it? It's an integer,
Yeah.
right? So Boolean data types were only introduced in 1980s. And for most languages, 1990s. There wasn't a data type called Boolean before that. We used to use integer variables called true and false with the value 0 and 1 behind the scene. So technically, there are only 2 data types, numbers to represent whole numbers and numbers to represent decimal numbers. Does that make sense? So classes are basically a combination of several variables put together. When I say I am creating string name, what is name? Is that a variable of type string? So if I write an instruction like the one I wrote in the chat, what is the name? What would you say? Name, is that a variable of type string?
Yes.
No. You can't say that because string is not a primitive type. String is a reference type. Reference type don't create variables. What do reference types create? What do reference types create? JC gave us that answer when I was asking questions from chapter 1. JC. Isn't this what
Yeah.
you told us, right, JC?
Was it when I said primitive types?
No, when I was asking chapter 1 questions,
Oh,
you gave an answer of an object, of something very specific to a class implementation, and that's what that is. Name is a specific implementation of string reference type. So name is not a variable. So if the data type is a class, we don't call it a variable. If a data type is a primitive type, only then we call it a variable. If the data type is reference type, we call it an object or an instance. So those are some terminologies, the more you hear them, the more you use them, the more you get familiar with them. Any questions, anybody so far? I'm not done with my questions yet. We're just in the process of reviewing the first 2 chapters. Just wanted to ask if you have any questions so far. Okay. How many arithmetic operators are there in Java?
There's 5.
5. Okay. What are they?
There's plus, minus, multiplication, division, and modulus.
Modulus. Okay. And which is the highest operator in terms of precedence? Highest precedence operator.
Keep thinking PEMDAS when it's parentheses, but
Yep, it'll be yep, exactly. It will be parentheses, right? Exactly. Okay. What are wrapper classes?
Are they classes that allow primitive data types to be used as objects?
Or vice versa. Yep, exactly. That's what the wrapper classes are. Okay. So for every primitive type, there is a wrapper class. What is the wrapper class for int?
Integer?
Integer with an uppercase I. What's the wrapper class for Boolean?
Isn't that just Boolean?
With an uppercase B,
Oh, right.
right? All the classes in Java start with the uppercase letter. How do you import a package in Java? And where you import a package in Java? 2 questions, how and where?
You do import, and then it's like java.util, whatever you're using.
Yeah.
And you do that above, like it should be on the very first line.
Yeah,
It should be
right
above
at
the main
top of it.
class. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. So import java.util. Okay. What's the purpose of that asterisk?
It gets everything pretty much.
All the classes. Is that a good idea?
probably not.
Depends on what you're doing, really.
Never a good idea.
No,
Okay,
It's a wild
you're-
card, right?
you mostly just want to use specific ones you are using.
Yeah, because that will slow down your application because it had to build all these links during compile time, unnecessary links to all the classes in the package. Even if it doesn't need to, it will still do it. So it's not a good idea. Okay. Which package does the scanner class belongs?
The import java.util scanner.
Yeah, exactly. So it belongs to java.util package. Okay, so the name of the package is java.util. Okay, scanner. This looks familiar.
Yes.
Yes, it does.
What is missing?
System.in
system.in.
in the
Okay, system.in on the right-hand side in the parentheses. What is the purpose of that system.in? What's the purpose of system.in? What are you trying to tell the computer?
to allow user input.
Input from keyboard. Keyboard
Yeah.
will be my input device, right? Okay. And what is system?
Class,
Exactly. This is class. Which package does it belongs to?
java.lang.system.
Java.lang. That's it. When I say package, just say java.lang.
Okay,
Okay. So scanner
Good.
belongs to the package java.util. What
Nice.
is the oldest Java GUI environment?
A option pane.
No. Oldest Java GUI environment. What was the name of that? The oldest Java GUI environment was AWT,
That's sweet.
Abstract Window Toolkit, AWT. I wrote it in the chat.
WT.
And AWT was then replaced by Swing. And Swing is now replaced by Java FX.
FX, yeah.
Okay. Is Swing built on top of AWT? The answer would be yes.
Yeah.
So all the classes in Swing have their parents in the AWT package. But for Java FX, that is not the case. Java FX is a new architecture. What was the biggest problem with AWT? Because it was operating system reliant. It was based on the operating system. So it was an operating system hog. It was eating up a lot of the resources. On the contrary, when we talk about the Swing environment, it runs in JVM. It is lightweight, doesn't bother the operating system that much. It has its own little thing running inside the JVM. So that is why all the Swing packages, package classes, all the Swing package classes that are meant for graphical user interface purpose, what letter do they start with? All the Java Swing GUI classes start with the letter
J.
J, just like J option pane, right? So when you have an uppercase J right at the beginning of a class name and it's a GUI class, that's an indicator it has to be from a Swing package. And that represents that it is local to JVM because what it is giving you is coming from JVM versus coming from the operating system. So when we write J option pane, okay, that's a Java's built-in class. Which package does it belongs to?
The Java X.swing.
Yep, very good. So the name of the package is Java X.swing. J option pane. What are the two methods of J option pane we learned last week?
Little message.
Show
Dialog.
input dialog was one of them.
Parse.
Uh-huh.
Show input and show message.
Okay. So show message and show input. What's the difference?
One receives input, the other displays output.
Displayed out. Okay. What are escape sequence characters?
Ooh, I wrote that down. Where's that at? Escape sequence.
Escape sequence characters
Is
are
that
those.
the
Yeah,
oh
go ahead.
sorry. Is
Go
that
ahead.
the forward slash that you would use within a string?
Not //
Okay,
backslash.
backslash.
Backslash with a character. A backslash and a character combination that will force character to act like what it is not. So for example, if I do /n, it instead of displaying n, it will work like an enter key.
Yeah.
Okay, /t will work like a tab. 2 slashes will throw 1 slash out. A slash in a double quotes will throw a double quotes out. Slash in a single quotes will throw a single quotes out, and so on and so forth. Okay. What's the difference between these two guys?
Print means you're continuing on the same line, and println means they're on separate lines.
Your next output. Next
line.
output on the same line versus your next output on the separate line. Cool. Print and println are examples of which programming construct? We just talked about it. It's in the same category as main, because main is a function, and these are also functions. Functions fall under which category of programming construct?
Modularization.
Yep, modularization. Exactly. These are modules or functions. Doesn't matter value returning, non-value returning. How do you know it's a function? What's a visual indicator?
The
The-
parentheses.
That's it, the parentheses. Yep. Okay. When we give variable names or method names, what naming convention do we follow?
Camel case.
Camel casing. Okay. Classes, the first letter is uppercase. If it's multi-word, then the first letter of each word is uppercase. What naming convention do we follow for constants?
Final and they're all capped with a underscore per.
Multi-words. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. Is it possible to declare a constant and give it its final value afterwards?
Nope, it has to remain constant throughout the entire program.
So you have to give it its initial value right at the point of declaration. Is Java a strongly typed language or loosely typed language?
Strongly typed language.
Strongly. And what does that mean when we say strongly typed language?
Does that mean it's like you have to like type out all the brackets that are at the end and that there's semicolons at the end of all the functions?
No, strongly typed languages are those languages where all variables must be declared with a data type. There are some languages, or like JavaScript or PHP, where you can simply declare a variable and give it a value. Based on the value, the compiler or interpreter will determine the data type of the variable. You don't explicitly write a data type. You will not say int age equals to 30. You will just say age equals to 30. And since it receives a value 30, it'll know that age is integer. So those are loosely typed languages. So Java is strong type languages. So is C#. All variables must have a data type. What is an assignment operator?
The equal sign?
An equal sign. Okay, used in assigning. Okay. How many operators do you know that we have learned so far in Java?
We've used arithmetic operators.
I'm just saying in general, overall,
Oh.
considering everybody that we have learned so far in the first week.
7,
How many did you say?
7,
It's more than that.
8,
9,
10. Just keep going up till we get it right.
11.
14.
Do you want me to do like 35, 46, 37, dead, done. No, no, auction, no.
Totally do it.
Let's see. Okay, you got addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, modulus. 5 are done, right?
Yep.
Then you have curly braces,
Oh, yeah.
right? You have parentheses. And you have square brackets. Okay, done? Okay. Then you have semicolon, 9. Okay. If I remember, there must be at least one more. I mean, like, there must be at least, I would say, 3 more, not one more, 3 more. I've given you 9. Let's see if you can tell me the other 3.
The equal sign.
Okay, equal sign. Okay, equal sign is there. Okay, so now, oh, sorry, 3, still 3 remaining.
Okay, so is the like a period one as well? Like system dot, the dot?
Aha, we still have 3 more to go.
Well, forward slash.
Aha,
Backslash.
forward slash. Okay, that is the division, and then we have a backslash symbol, right?
Yep. Asterisk.
Okay, we do not have commas. We don't have commas here. Somebody wrote in the chat comma.
Use percent, don't we?
We do, but that's modulus, right? We counted that already.
True. Oh, we got modulus. That's
We
right.
modulus, right? We don't have commas. I mean, like, if you're doing regular expressions, then I'm talking about the ones that we have used. So Ismail, that the ones that you mentioned, we did not use any of them. We didn't use angular brackets. We did not use commas. We didn't use question mark. We did not use them. I'm
We
talking
used
about the
greater
ones
than
that we
less than.
used.
Did we use greater than less than?
No, we did not.
Not yet?
We did not use
Oh.
any of those.
See, that's the problem with taking too many programming classes at the same time.
You
That's
probably
almost-
might have read about them in chapter 2, but we didn't use them in class because there are some code snippets in the book when it talks about Boolean and the author introduces those operators.
Plus, minus.
Plus, minus, multiply, divide, modulus, and then we have 3 types of brackets that we have used. That's 8. Then we have equals to, that's 9. We have period 10. We have backslash 11. We have double quotes 12. We have single quotes 13. Assignment operator 14. And one more symbol.
Building.
Semicolon.
It's the semicolon, right? So these are, I just put them in the chat. These are the symbols or the operators that we have seen so far. Remember, we are still reviewing, right? So we did 2 chapters that were like easy stuff because you already did them in C#. But when we start reviewing things, the whole reason of review is to help you not only recall, but also to pay attention to the little details that we take for granted. So there is one operator I used over here that I did not say it out before. Which operator is that? I did not tell you that. I just put it there in that list. Which is the 15th operator. Say it again.
I'm running out of keyboard buttons here. I got tilde. That's about it.
No. The ones that I listed in the chat,
Oh,
there
bells?
is one operator that I listed there, but I did not talked about it here. I mean, like when I was listing them, I only went up to 14, but I didn't say that one.
Forward slash.
I did say that. The forward one, the backward, but I talked about those, right? But I
I
did
don't say
not.
single. Oh, no, I do. Yeah,
I talked about quotes, right?
got
The
those.
asterisk.
Aha, we have multiplication we talked about, right? Asterisk, right? And that will gonna basically make it 16. If you ask me, asterisk will make it 16 because we have an asterisk in the import instruction as well. That's for a different nature than multiplication. So yeah, there's still one more remaining that
You commented on, right? That's in your plus minus asterisk forward slash, one of those up in that little chat
okay,
section is-
you are increasing the list. Okay, there is still one in that first line.
I don't suppose it's parentheses.
It is the plus concatenation symbol.
Oh,
See that? I wrote plus twice.
you totally did.
Okay, so look at it. I mean, like in 1 week, you learned so much, right? And it was all done in different places within the program. So when we sit back and we start counting these little things, you're like, oh yeah, I did this, I did this, I did that. Right. Okay, cool. Okay. Does anybody has any questions before we move forward? Which method of the scanner object you will use to accept only one word from the user?
Single quotes?
No, which method of
Oh,
the
sorry.
scanner
My bad.
object would you call to accept only one word from the user? Single word.
Next.
Next. Very good. Okay. And which method would you use for multiple words?
That next line,
Next line. Very good. Okay. Which method will you use for integers?
next int.
And which one would you use for float?
I'm guessing next float,
Next float. And for double?
next double,
Next double. Okay, cool. And for character?
next char.
Uh,
Damn.
there isn't a method to accept characters in the scanner class.
Oh, your trick questions again. They always get me.
Okay, now can you tell me the method to accept Boolean?
Next Boolean.
There isn't a method. Character and Boolean, they don't have any methods through the scanner class. Okay. So I just put in the chat what I just talked about. Okay, who can give me the right-hand side of second line where I want the first line's object to be converted into an int value and store in the variable number I? So if you can write that right-hand side in the chat. No. Incorrect, Zach. You cannot explicit cast like that a string to an int. You can only do explicit casting like that for primitive types, provided that they're numbers, not between reference types and primitive types. So what Zach wrote would be perfectly okay if I had something like this, what I'll be just sharing with you in the chat. So now 6.5 will first be converted to a 6 and will then be stored in age. That's how you would use it, okay? Yep, you got it, Zach. Good job. So this is how it will be converted. And what kind of class is the integer class? Integer class is a wrapper class. And wrapper classes, as we discussed earlier, are those classes which allow you to convert from primitive to non-primitive and vice versa. Okay, who can give me the right-hand side of the second line? I now want to convert an int into a string, just the opposite, reverse process. Yep. So we will now write here. Aiden, you're not correct. You still need to
Rats.
tweak that instruction. You're on the right path though. Because the way you wrote it, you are basically considering age to be an object. Age is not an object. Age is a variable of int type. So it can't really call any functions. Yes, JC, correct. So I gave you guys the same instructions written down with right-hand side completed. So integer has a parse int method to convert a string to int and a toString method to convert an int to a string. And so does float and double and short and long and byte. They all have a to method for string and a parse method for a string to whatever they are. Okay, everybody got it? Cool. I hope it was a good review for how to help you remember some of that stuff from last week, and I hope it is not overwhelming and making you think that, oh, we should spend more time on chapter 2. Don't worry, you will get to see all of these things that you're learning every week. You will just be building on top of that stuff. You already know how it works by taking Intro to Programming. Right? Okay. So now is a good time to basically go in chapter number 3. And let me bring up the book. So the only person we are missing is Carter. Everybody else is here. Okay. I hope he's okay. So you guys can see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
So I clicked on the textbook, and that's the textbook. We are going into chapter number 3. The chapter number 3 is about using methods, which is the modularization part of the construct. So here in this example, in this chapter, author talks about what is a method. You already know what is a method from iterative programming. Methods are named code blocks. That's all the methods are. If somebody asks you, can you define a method? Simple definition. It's a named code block. What is a code block? A code block is a set of instructions put together. How do you create a code block? Code blocks. Yeah, go ahead.
You use the beginning and ending for no
And
curly
then-
braces.
Yes, exactly. That's how you create a code block. And you put a little name on top of that code block, and that's how you create your methods. What is the advantage of creating a named code block called a method? Why would you want to do that?
You can call the
Yeah.
method.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say you could call the method.
Yeah. So it's
That-
write it once, use it a million time approach.
And also provides a cleaner code.
There's one more advantage. Let's see. One more advantage. Cleaner code. Call it many times. Don't have to reinvent the wheel, and one more.
Easier to spot errors.
Easier to spot errors. Okay. One more. Close, very close to what you just said, but not just errors.
Helps in the debugging process.
Well, of course, it falls under the error and handling stuff. It is easier to maintain. Because if you ever have to make any changes, you just go and make that change in one place. And when you run it the next time, all calls will reflect the change. So that's easier to maintain. So it talks about, the chapter talks about what is a method, how you call it, what are the parts of a method, what is a parameter, how do you create methods with multiple parameters, how you create a non-value returning method, how you create a value returning method, what's a code block, what's a scope, and it talks about what are overloaded methods. Do you guys know what are overloaded methods, by the way?
It's a method with the same name, but different parameters, right?
Yes, yes. Same name, different parameters. So if I have a method called X with a parameter of type integer, and I have another method X with a parameter of type double, will this be called overloaded?
Yes.
Yes, okay. If I have a method X with one integer parameter and another method X with two integer parameters, will this also be called overloaded?
Yes.
Yes. So difference in parameters could be in the number, or difference in parameters could be in same parameter numbers, but different types. Okay, what if I have a method with two parameters, integer and string, and another method, same name, string integer? Would this be called an overloaded as well?
No.
So one combination integer string, another combination string integer. Will this be overloaded? Yes or no? And JC said no. Who else thinks no? The correct answer is yes, right? The correct answer is yes. So this will also be called overloaded. Okay. So that's what basically this chapter mainly focuses on, modularization. So when you call a method, calling a method is also called invoking a method. And the method that you call is called a called method. Okay. So the method that is calling is called a caller. So caller method is the one that is calling, and the one that gets called is called a called method. Here is an example of a method main. Inside the body of the main, are you calling any methods?
You can.
No, are you right now?
No,
No, it's just a simple parent line statement.
And what is print line?
A method?
Exactly. So you are
yes.
calling a method, right? It's a
My bad.
built-in method that you're calling, not a user-defined method. So,
My bad.
okay. So right now, inside the body of the main, how many methods are you calling? One method, but 4 times. Println, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that means method can be called multiple times. Now, in this particular case, where you see something like this, main is calling println, but main is also calling display hours. Display hours is not a built-in functionality of Java. So somebody has to code it local. So that's why somebody somewhere has to code either before or after the main a method called display hours. So this would be a good implementation of the idea that we have a main method which only displays smart electronics. And then we have a method called display hours, where we put the display hours for the workplace. And we call display hours anytime we need to display the work hours. Have you seen something like this in C#?
Yeah.
Yeah, you must have. It's just like you probably do not remember it that clearly, but you probably have. These instructions could very well be written inside the main, like they were written before, as you know, everything was in the main. But again, you know, going back to one of your comments earlier on, it is more cleaner to modularize the code. So now everything, so when you create a module, you have to keep in mind that the modules have instructions that serve the purpose of the module. Do not overcrowd a module with too much information. That will again make it very difficult to maintain. So always keep that in mind. Okay, having said that, I'm opening Eclipse. Can you all please open Eclipse on your end? And please give me a green check when you are done opening Eclipse. And who can tell me what is the first thing that I do after I open Eclipse if I do not want to work in my last week's stuff? I want to start new week stuff, new.
File
Uh-huh.
and new project,
New-
Java
new-
project.
Very good, thank you. Call it unit 2. And then I have my next and finish. Okay, what do I do next?
You're gonna right click on unit 2, go new class.
Awesome, okay.
Then
Let's
you're
call this
gonna-
class methods example 1 with a public static void main. Don't forget to check the public static void main checkbox. And then click finish. Okay, initially, we will write some instructions inside the main method. And then we will modularize the code.
I'm sorry, can you go back to, I can get the project thing to open?
Yeah, do you have the project created?
No, it wouldn't let me do it, so I don't know if I'm,
If you go to File, New Java Project, did it show you something like this?
yeah, but some reason it wasn't letting me do anything, and then you said name it unit 2?
Yeah, I called it Unit 2, and also make sure that you uncheck the create module info.java file under module. If that option is showing up for you, make sure you uncheck that and then hit finish. Did it let you create it this time?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
I
cool,
don't know
awesome.
why-
Then you right click on the unit 2 and then you go to new and then you click class. And then the name of the class is methods example 1. That's what you write in the name. And then you make sure you check the main checkbox and hit finish.
Okay, got it.
Cool, awesome. give me a green check whenever you guys are done with this and are done running it. For now, it will just simply display you lots of output, but we will modularize this code in the next step. So except for Jack Harris, everybody else is done. Oh, Jack is also done. Okay, awesome. Okay, so far, whatever we did, everybody knows what we did. Everybody know what we did, right? Okay, so now going back to the way the book did it, we're going to be following the same stuff so that you know exactly how things are done. So look at figure 3-5. Public, public, static, static, void, void, main, display hours. So the first three things are exactly the same. It is only the name of the method that'll be different. Display hours is not receiving any parameters, so parentheses are required, but they will be empty. And then you have the opening and closing curly braces, and then that's where the information will go. Now let's have a look at our example over here. If you closely look at the main, what are some of the divisions that you will do in main? Let's say, to help you understand, the first 4 outputs are pretty much about college. So they can go in one module. Now, let me tell me what should be the next point of split.
Right under line 14.
Right underneath line 14. Okay, cool. So this is one split. This is one particular program. Oh, sorry, one particular, I would say, school. Okay. And this is one particular department. This is a department. So college, school, department. What did I tell you about creating a module? What will be the first word? Public, then static, then void, then let's call this college. So we'll have one method, college. And I'll model everything after the same. Okay, the second method, notice it is giving me an error. You can't have two methods with the exact same name and exact same parameters. So I'm going to call the second one school. And I'll call the third one department. Did everybody follow this as to how and why I created what I just did here? Now is the time to move those instructions inside the body of these guys. So the first 4 lines, you will literally cut them. You'll right click and cut, or you could use Control X, or you can use edit menu, cut, whatever you use to cut it out and paste it inside college. The next 3 lines of school, same deals. You cut it, you paste it in school. The remaining lines from the main, you cut them and you paste them in department. So if I save my program and run it, will I get the same output as before?
No.
No. Why? Because of I am missing the call, right?
You're not
I
calling the
haven't-
procedure.
yeah, exactly. I have not yet called any of them. So I'll go down to respective comments under college. I'll call college. Under school, I'll call school. And under department, oops, I call department, just like that. And now when I run it, it will work just fine. Run it, and you get to see the same output. So give me a green check when you guys are done with this step. Okay, so everybody's done, or just waiting for Ethan? Okay.
For some reason, mine has an error when I try and run it.
Okay. Does your file has an X on the tab?
Yeah.
Okay. So go ahead and start running through the lines. Do any of your lines have an X?
No, there's just an X on the first line, but there's nothing there.
Okay. Try saving the changes. Is still the X is still there?
Yeah.
Okay.
It-
Can you hover over the X? What does it say?
says must declare a named package because this compilation unit is associated to the named module unit 2.
Oh, you know what happened? When you created your project, you forgot to uncheck the module. So basically, this is the thing, go ahead, right click on, it's like click file, new, and create a Java project.
Okay.
Okay, call it maybe unit 2B. And notice this time that right at the bottom, you have a module with a check on the create module info. Uncheck that
Okay.
and then hit finish. Once you do that, then open the unit 2B and drag your methods example from unit 2 or whatever your project name is to the new one, and then run it from there. And then you can delete the previous one.
Okay. Alrighty, it's working now. Thanks.
Awesome, cool, no problem. Oh, cool. Okay, now let's say I want the college to be able to change the name of the president. So I will pass a parameter, and that's what parameters are used for, to customize a method. So I go down to line number 14 and I say, well, you know what? The college can receive a parameter called name. The moment I do that, line number 6 starts erroring out because now there is a mismatch. The caller is calling with no parameters, but the called needs a parameter. Okay, let's first fix line 18. Instead of read to Raju, we will concatenate the variable name. And this is the same stuff you learned in week 1, how you can concatenate a variable with a message. And now let's go to line number 6, and we will now pass, let's say, Brian Albright from line number 6. Just so that you can see the difference. Now, when you run it, you will see in the very first method, the college president is Brian. So the main reason of having parameters is to be able to customize methods. Okay. Now let's change this parameter back to read to Raju, save the changes and rerun it so that you can see that on every run, whatever parameter you pass is the value that gets to show. Now on line number 7, we will type system.out.println. And we will repeat it 2 more times. Rerun it, and you should now see a line as a separator between each call. It doesn't matter how many hyphens you put, I just randomly put some. And whatever I did on line 7, I repeated that on 10, repeated that on 13, ran it, and I got the output. Something like this. Okay. Now, if you look at line number 7 and 10 and 13, they're doing exactly the same job. So when you have an instruction that is doing exactly the same job, that is also a good candidate for a module. So let's create a module here on line 15. Public static void line. And let's move this instruction inside line. And instead of calling this long instructions, whenever I need a line, I can just simply call line. Now it becomes much easier for me to code because now I'm coding less. I'm just calling a line, right? And somebody looking at it, they know that must be a method that to produce a line. And if I ever want to change the length of the line, means produce more hyphens, I only can do it right from one location. And in the next run, it will be reflective all over. So that shows us that the code is cleaner, easier to maintain, and anything that is so repetitive, you're better off moving it in a module. Can you give me a green check if you're done? Okay, thank you very much. So, and also I just want to ask everybody, are you following what I'm doing? I hope I'm not going too fast.
Doing good.
Okay, cool, awesome. So the main purpose of being able to pass a parameter is for that reason. Now, let me add one more line of output to the college method. Okay. Total students. And I'm just putting in a number here, you know. You run it again, and this time you have one additional output called total students 20,000. Again, the student count is something that can vary every now and then. So it's a very good candidate for customization. So let me go to line number 20 again, and let me add another parameter of type integer called student count. So now I have two parameters, the president name and the student count. And line number 25, I will replace that hard-coded 20,000 with the value coming from student count. Now comes another problem here on line number 6. Why do we have a problem on line number 6?
Well, in our method, we have 2 parameters, and when we called it, we only have 1.
Very good. Yes, so now I am passing a second parameter, which is a number. The moment I do that, the error is fixed. And when I now run it, you will see that the student count is whatever number I pass. Okay. So the method header is that very first line, public static void, that line. You have an optional access specifier. The writing the word public is not required. Okay. You have an optional static modifier. Okay. If you drop the word static, your method becomes non-static, which we will learn about in next chapter. What are non-static methods? But for now, we will keep both the words public and static, even though they're optional, they're not required. Okay. A return type, if your method returns a value back, it will either have the word void if it's non-value returning, or will replace it with some data type if it's value returning. Followed by an identifier, which is the name of the method, and then parentheses, which may or may not be empty based on the nature of the methods. So these are the 5 things that your method has. Specifier, access specifier. You have your method static, non-static stuff, return type, identifier, and parameters. Okay, so this diagram pretty much shows you what he was talking about, what she was talking about in the previous page. So have a look at this diagram. Then have a look at this diagram. So the word void for non-value returning functions. Okay. Then the third thing is the method name. Then you have parentheses, and in parentheses, you can either leave it empty or you can write your parameters. Adding parameters to the method, we already did that. So I'm just going over the pages in the book. So you add your parameters like this. You write every parameter must have a name and must have a data type. So the parameters that we added are a string type parameter name and an int type parameter called student count. Here is an example the author shows you where the author declares a variable called hours and declares a variable called your hours worked, and then calls calculate gross once with a value of 10. If the total number of hours are 10, then all the calculations are based on that. then calls it again with 25 stored inside a variable hours, and then all calculations are based on that, and then calls it with your hours worked, which is 37.5, and now all the calculations are based on that. Okay, does everybody follow this example? That we are calling the same method 3 times and passing different values, and method is acting accordingly. So standard rate is a double, and we have a gross, which will be the variable in which the output will be stored as a product of hours, which is coming in as a parameter, times the standard rate, and that's what we are displaying. So that'll be the output. Okay, creating a method that requires multiple parameters. So we also looked at this. The author is using the same parameter type for both parameters. We did it 2 different parameter types. So that's basically the same idea. And next we'll be creating method that return values. So we're going to be looking at this topic, but after the break. Let's take a break till 7:35. And then when you come back at 7:35, we will then be modifying our existing example to become a value returning example. Okay, so I'll see you guys at 7:35. Welcome back, everybody.
Ew.
Bonjour.
Bonjour.
Guten Tag.
Suppose that's German, Alvin?
You got it.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So guys, we were talking about, before we went on break, about the value returning functions. These are the functions or the methods that when you call them, they return something back to the caller. And that's why we need a special statement towards the end of these functions. It's called a return statement. So instead of saying public static void, we will say public static and some kind of a data type. So we'll replace the word void with a data type. The data type could be any of the primitive types, or it could be any of the reference types. But you have to remember that whatever data type you use in the definition or the header statement is the same data type value or variable or object you must have in the return statement, so that they are matching. Now notice over here, the method is calculate gross. It receives 2 parameters, and it is returning a value of type double. Therefore, the variable that is in the return line, it must be also of the type double to match the definition instruction. Did you have the same rule in C#?
Yeah, it's pretty
Exactly.
much.
Exactly. Same rule over here. Same rule in any other language that you will work with. Okay. Now let's get back to Eclipse. In Eclipse, we will create a function to accept an input from user. So we will call this one public static string. So it'll return a string value input. Now notice it is giving me a red line because I do not have a return statement yet. As soon as I write the return statement, the line will disappear. So I will accept an input from user. So system.out.print please enter president's name, string name equals to, and now I need to have a scanner object, right? So as soon as I wrote return name, the error disappeared. So what do you guys think is the purpose of this method?
To get an input and then display that input.
So get an input and then return that input back to whoever calls it. So most probably that'll be college. Now, first write the method and then I'll make modifications up here. So I am on line number 7, introducing a local string variable called name, and I am calling the input. So whatever gets returned by the input from line number 23, so basically, line number 7 will call line number 19. And line number 23 will return the value inside name in place of the input. And that value will then be assigned to name, just like that. So the name that you see on line number 22, this name, that is local to input. So that's the scope of that variable. Okay, from line number 22 to line 23. That's it. Those are the only 2 lines that is available. The name that you declare on line number 7 is available only to line number 17. That's the scope of that variable. And they're both local to their own respective methods. So that is why there is no conflict. Okay. Did everybody follow this so far? Or does anybody has any questions? Okay. So now I will replace the Ritu Raju in double quotes with the name. So whatever I am holding inside the name variable is what I will, name object is what I'll use in my call. Okay, so let me run this. The first thing it does, it asks for the name of the president. So let's say if I do Brian Albright. And hit enter. Now notice it says Brian Albright is the college president. If I run it again, and this time I enter Ritu Raju, then it will display Ritu Raju in the president's name. So whatever value I pass. Zach, right now, we are creating all static methods because we are creating all class level methods. In chapter 4, when we will learn non-static methods. You would call the class level methods if you are not calling an instance level entities. So once you start calling something at instance level means something that will vary from an instance to an instance, that will be non-static. So if something is general purpose, like for example, if you want to give some kind of a description of your application, that is not instance specific, that would be at the application level. So it's class level, so that'll be static. Okay, now let's say I also want to input the total number of students. What do you guys think I should do?
Public static int. Would you do int or integer?
Int, because
Int.
that's primitive. Return type could be int or integer, doesn't matter, but you could do either way. But since I have a primitive value, I could use primitive type. Okay. Let's do that approach, and then I will show you how you can shorten that code. Okay, so let's create another one. Public static int. Now notice, changing the return type does not create an overloaded method. Remember that, okay? Overloaded method means same name, different parameters. So that's why I would have to call this one maybe input 2. Please enter student count, right? And integer count equals to in dot next int, and then I can return that count. So it's a simple fix. Okay, then scroll back up to the top. Integer count equals to input 2, and replace the 23,000 with count. Now, when you run this example, it will ask for president name. It will ask for the student count, and whatever you enter as to the president name and student count is what it will display. So I entered Ritu Raju 24,000, so that's what it displayed, Ritu Raju 24,000.
Would you mind going back down to the code?
Got it? Can I scroll back up now? Okay, cool. So the only thing that we did on the top is we stored the value in a different variable called count. And then we passed that variable count on line number 9 to college. College received it in the second parameter, which was for student count. And this shows you that the parameter names don't need to match. So here I was passing name into a name, fine, or count into a student count. It doesn't matter. The names don't matter. The types do. So when you run this example, it will take 2 inputs from you and it will show you the output. Okay. Did everybody got it? Can you give me a green check? So that then I will take you to the next step of the same example. Okay, so Aiden and JC. Okay, got it. Okay. How about you, Jason? Got it. Okay, cool. Awesome. Okay, now next, what I will do is, guys, can I do the same thing with only one method? See, if you look at the 2 methods, they're pretty much doing the same thing. They're declaring a scanner object. They have a message. They take an input and they return an output. Can I somehow just do it with one method?
Could you build a method inside the method?
No,
Stack it?
no. Just the way input is right now. Just simply drop input 2 and just use input.
Could you change the parameters?
Yeah, I may have to modify some of the details of input, but I don't necessarily need 2 separate methods. I could just simply drop input 2 and I can make both of them call input. But you will be like, well, that's an error because input is returning string and count needs an integer, but we know how to fix that. How do you fix that? How do you fix the problem that if string is coming in and integer is the catcher?
Convert it.
You convert it, right? You use a wrapper class, right?
Like
We can
super
fix
wrapper.
that, but with a wrapper class. So we can literally say integer dot to and right in front, okay, and that will sorry, and not to integer, it's parse in, sorry, parse in, and that will convert the string to an equal and integer. So that problem is solved. No more errors anymore. Okay. However, there's one logical problem. The logical problem is input is set for one input message, which is enter president's name. Now that's where I can customize, right? I can have a custom message that sometimes I pass, please enter president's name, and sometimes I pass, please enter student count. So I can have some customization going on here. So I can concatenate my message and customize my message. So please enter, and this piece I can customize. So for example, on line number 7, I can say, pass this text, resident's name. And then on the next line, I can say input, pass student count. Okay. So I can customize that. So now my message is custom. The user will not know if it is one method or 2 methods. So when I now run it, notice, please enter president's name. Read to Raju, enter. Now it right away asks me, please enter student count. That's it, done. Same stuff. Same output. No difference. So we did a value returning method with no parameters first, and now we are doing a value returning method with a parameter, one parameter. Okay, everybody got this working fine? I'm waiting for Aiden, Jacob, Zach, Ethan, and Miguel. Lewis and Aiden. And Lewis. Lewis is the only one working right now? Okay. Any errors, Lewis, or you're just coding? Oh, you're good.
Just finished. Thank you.
Cool, no problem. Okay, so understanding the code blocks. Look at it. If I have a variable called a number exists from wherever it is declared all the way down to the end of the code block. So it is the variable in the outer code block. It is also available in the inner code blocks. And any variable declared in the inner code blocks is only available in the inner code blocks, is not available in the outer code blocks. So that's basically what the author is trying to show you here with the block structures. Overloading a method is our next topic. Overloading a method, as we learned about before, is a method that has the same name but different parameter lists. That's what basically the overloaded method is. Why do you want to use an overloaded method? The overloaded method is used for the reason that sometimes you are doing the same task, but you're doing it with some variation. So instead of calling each method a different name, you can call it the same name and just do the variations in the parameters. And the computers are smart enough, the compiler is smart enough that when you call the method and pass 3 parameters, it will invoke the version with 3 parameters. If it call the one with 2 parameters, it will just call the one with the 2 parameters. This is sort of kind of a polymorphic behavior. You know, one name, different implementations. Do we have polymorphic behaviors in English language? Yes, we do. For example, have you ever used the same English word in different contexts?
Yep.
Okay. Can you think of an example?
Weather, like the weather is warm today and weather.
No, but those are different words.
Oh, my bad.
Read and read.
Read and read.
read.
Exactly. Spell the same, but in different contexts. How about same spelling, same pronunciation, different context? Same spelling, same pronunciation, different context.
Count and count, like count as in title, like Count Dracula, who's also counting.
I am not following.
You can count on me or count numbers.
Oh, count on me. Okay. Okay. Like, okay. Mm-hmm. Any other example? Moose. Okay.
How about live and live? Like
Say that again.
live and like live.
It's okay. It's but again, you know, different pronunciation. I said same pronunciation, same spelling.
All right, man, my brain's old. I can't think.
You're not older than me.
By the way, he's taller than he looks. When I met him in person, he was really tall. Like I think we're about the same height, or look, he's a little bit taller than me.
Google is both a noun and a verb.
Google is both a noun and a verb. Okay. Okay. For example, let me give you one example too.
Hole, like you dig a hole in a whole pizza.
Yeah, but whole pizza will be with a W, and digging a hole is with H. H-O-L-E versus W-H-O-L-E. Here I gave you a word in the chat, play. I can play soccer, right? And I can play piano. The same word, but different implementation. The word play could mean different things. Still the word play. Similarly, I played soccer, I played piano, and he played with me. Same word, but all three are different implementations. So that's basically a polymorphic behavior. The list must have different number of parameters. Okay, a list must have parameter data types in different order. So those two rules, if it applies, then it is a overloaded. Okay. Now notice we have a calculate interest method, which takes two double parameters. If I have another variation of calculate interest with one double and one integer parameter, then I can say that I have overloaded. Okay. Here is another example. How many variations of display date do you see here? Display date. Three variations. The first one only takes one parameter, which is the month. Second one takes the month and the date. And the third one takes month, date, and year, three parameters. So in the main method, you can have calls. Depending on the parameters, it will match that method and will call that method. So that's your method overloading. Learning about ambiguity. So when you overload method, you risk creating an ambiguous situation, one in which the compiler cannot determine which method to use. For example, If you were to create two methods called compute balance, and they both are name same and the parameter data types are the same, the parameter names are different, the compiler will yell back and say that's an error. Now, Eclipse is a smart IDE, it tells you right away, but not all IDEs can do that. If it's just a plain text editor, it won't tell you until you compile. So when you compile, it's going to yell back and say, you know, this is not overloaded. So different variable names don't create overloaded methods. Okay, here is another problem. Okay, this is also ambiguous. Why is it ambiguous? Can anybody tell me why is this ambiguous?
Everything's the same except there's just different data types.
So if I make a call here, okay, so when if you compile it and you made a method call such as compute, sorry, not compute balance. For example, okay, if I pass 306, now that's confusing. Why is that confusing? 306. Why is that confusing? Because I'm passing two integers. 300 is an integer and 6 is an integer. There is no method called calculate interest with both parameters as integers. So that causes an ambiguous situation, and there's no exact match. Because both of the matches can be promoted to that match. So that's why that creates an ambiguity. Okay, go ahead and read the chapter summary, and then we will work with an overloaded example. Let me know when you guys are done reading the chapter summary. Okay, so we have still Miguel and Daniel reading the summary. Okay, Daniel is done, Miguel is done. Okay, cool, awesome. So, okay, let me share my screen again. And this time we will create a new class. So I'll right click on unit 2, create a new class. The name of my class will be overloaded example. And don't forget to check the public static void main. And click finish. Ethan, to answer your question about the relationship between an object and a class is, again, we will explore this programmatically next week, but class is a template. An object is a specific implementation of that template. For example, movie is a classification, but when you talk about Lord of the Rings, that is an instance of what you call a movie. So an object is a specific implementation and a class is a blueprint generic idea. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Now here we will create a few methods: public, static, void, area, integer, side. Public, static, void area, integer length, and integer width. So now if I call area and I pass one parameter, then line 8 will be invoked. If I call area and pass two parameters, then line 12 will be invoked. Okay. So for example, here, system.out.println area of a square is side times side. And here we have area of a rectangle is length times width. So when I call area with one parameter, line number 9 was called. When I called area with two parameters, line number 12 was called. And you can see that it's quite evident from the output. One displays area of a square, the other one displays area of a rectangle. Okay. Everybody get to run this, see this. We will come back to this example after I modify our previous example. But I just want to make sure that everybody is done with this example. Okay, so I'm waiting for Jack and Desmond and Miguel. Okay. Now let's go back to method example 1. Do you see these 3 lines here? What am I doing in line number 1? I mean, like line 7, I mean, line 7.
Asking for input.
Okay, and what am I doing in line 8?
You're adding on to that input.
I'm again asking for input and converting it to meet the data type needs.
You got
Right?
it.
Right?
Integer.
Okay. In both of those lines, I am taking an input and putting it in a variable. The variable name and count, where are they used? Which line numbers are they used?
Line 9.
That's it?
And
Yeah, that's it. Nowhere
yeah,
else. At the end of the main, you don't see them anywhere else. So if the variable is mainly used to hold an input and use it as a parameter, and its use is nothing more than that, that means that variable is a memory waster. You could literally avoid that variable by simply deleting it from the call and replacing the call with the actual method call right away, like just like that, just like that, just like that. So you put your call right where the parameters would go. So you know what will happen here? I'll show you with annotation. It will, when it reaches this line, it will call the method input. Okay, it will call the method input. Let me scroll down just a little bit so that I can draw better. Okay, let me clear this one. So when it reaches input, it calls input and it passes president's name into the message. So it accepts the president's name, and that president's name is then returned back in place of this entire placeholder. Then the second parameter runs. The second parameter then makes a call to the same method. It accepts the input from the user, and now the value comes back and sits in the place of this parameter, which then gets converted into integer. And now both of these parameters gets passed to college. Looks very confusing, but it helps you eliminate unnecessary memory. Do you guys follow this?
Yeah, it's just a bit like, wrapping the head around it, I'd say.
So basically you're replacing the variable placement with the actual method call right from that spot. And once you do that, these 2 lines are unnecessary. So you are basically accepting the value and putting it in this placeholder, then accepting the value, putting it in that placeholder. After the call takes place, the memory gets wiped out. That's it. Line number 8, whatever values it has are not there on line 9. And anyway, you don't need them. Okay, so you guys follow? Everybody?
yeah. Hopefully.
The reason I'm asking over and over again, because now things are about to go a little bit more complicated. So just want to make sure you understood this step. Jacob, Tatiana, Aiden, Miguel, everybody understood Desmond. Okay. Now, let me go back to overload example. How can I take an input instead of 5 from the user? I want to take an input from the user for the length of the side of the square as opposed to hard coding the value 5.
At the in dot next int.
Can I just do int dot next int right there?
No, you'd have
No.
to,
You have to create a separate method
right,
like we did in the previous example and take an input like that.
you got it, yeah.
Is that what everybody's thinking too?
I hope so.
Let's see. Anybody has a different idea than what we just said? Okay, looks like everybody's on the same page. Now, here's the twist. How about if I tell you that I want you to take an input from the user, but without introducing any more methods? Now, don't try to don't try to tell me that I'll use J option pane dot input. No, you can't even do that. You can't add a single line of code extra, you know. You cannot add more lines. The number of lines will stay the same, yet you will take the input from the user.
Would you change the parameters?
To what? You can change the parameters, of course.
Change them to accept input?
How? For example, what should I change the 5 to so that it can accept the input from user?
I mean, you could use a scanner, but that you would add another line to initialize the scanner.
Yeah, that's the thing. You can't do that. That's the whole catch. Keep thinking. Once you are exhausted, then let me know, and then we will see how we can fix it. Aiden, do you have any suggestion?
No, I kind of think it's a trick question, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Could you use the integer parse int?
But I need to accept the input from user. That's the thing, you know? I could definitely use integer.parseInt, of course, if I need to, but because I won't be adding any more lines.
I mean, theoretically, you could write an entire program on one line. Like you just use the semicolon, the terminator a lot.
But then that will be multiple instructions, and you can't write instructions within a parameter, right? Parameter has to be a value, not an instruction. Okay, how many programs are there within unit 2? Simple question, right? How many programs are there in unit 2 right now? My unit 2 or your unit 2?
2.
3.
Two programs, right? One is the methods example 1 and the other one is overloaded example. Those are the only 2 I created. If you have more, they probably have more, but I have 2. Are both classes public? Public class overloaded example? Public
Yeah,
class
they're
method?
both public.
Aha. That means they can see each other because they're in the
Forgot
same
about
package.
inheritance.
So I can, no, it's not inheritance. Inheritance is when one class becomes a child of another. They're not in inheritance. They're just in the same project. They are just in the same scope. They can just see each other because they're both public. Okay. So now since they're both public, overloaded example, instead of 5, in place of 5, it can say methods example 1 dot. Do you see anything in that list that popped up that I could use?
Input.
Aha, input. And now I can custom my message. Enter side. Okay, now comes the same problem. This method will return something of type string, but we already talked about it, that I can always parse it, right? Exactly the same way I was parsing it here. The only difference was that here the input was local. So I was calling a local method. I did not need a class reference. Now that I'm calling input in a different class, that's why I need a class reference with the method name. And this is another cool thing that you can do. Now, if I try this, it'll ask me to enter a side, and here you go. Cool.
Yeah, I thought that's pretty cool. I thought you could only do that through inheritance.
Nope. You can do that through aggregation, where 2 classes can see each other. They can call each other's public static methods, provided you give the class name. And I can replicate that for the other 2 parameters. I'll say enter length and enter width. And here we have enter side, enter length, enter width. Pretty crazy, but still doable. Let me know when you guys are done with this. And it's, I mean, like, you've ran it, You input the values and it works. You can see the output.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
So the two enters, one of those are coming from the methods example, correct?
Yes, yes, all inputs are coming from there. So we pretty much just put the, please enter. I should not use enter. You're right. Enter. Please enter. Yeah, I should just do that. Thank you. So we should just say, please enter side. Please enter length. Please enter width. Yeah, so that should, yeah. So since the method already has the word enter in it, we do not need to pass the enter again. So Jack, Aiden, Tatiana, Desmond, Ismail, everybody got it? Jonathan, did you get it too?
Mine's not working correctly.
You want me to look at it or? are you-
Yeah, I think you should look at it.
Okay, cool. Share your screen then.
Okay.
Can you run it again, please?
Okay, so it's just basically it goes like, so I'll say 23 and then,
Okay, it just failed right away. It gives you number format exception. Can you go back to methods example 1?
okay,
Scroll down. Okay, so you have okay, can you go back to your overloaded example again?
okay,
Oh, you're calling input. Okay. Now go back to methods example 1. So you are taking the message, you're accepting an input, and you're returning the value back. Okay, now go back to your overloaded example, line number 6. Just tweaking. Oh, it is okay. Okay, I take out that colon. Okay, and then try to run it.
okay. Let's
Enter 23. Yeah, no, it's not just the colon. It is. Do you see that in the double quotes on line number where the first error, it has a space 23. Why there is a space is what I'm wondering. Okay, go back to your method example 1. Let's see how a space is coming. Please enter. Oh, because you have no. No, that's fine. In that next line. Where are you getting the space from? And I am running it. I don't see space. Tatiana, you took out the colon and it fixed it for you?
Yeah. It kept messing up, but as soon as I took out the colon, it started working.
It should not have to be that. Go back to overloaded example again.
Okay.
Okay. You're passing the word side to input. Do you see that when you're accepting an input from the user, do you see a little space before 23? Right? Now, can you run it again? Can you run it again?
Okay.
Now, okay, now type 23 and hit enter. There was, I think there was a space that you were like hitting a space bar or something like that.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah. So now enter a length.
Okay, so 4 and then
Width. Yeah.
oh, okay. I
Okay,
guess it was
okay,
just
yeah.
that I was
Yeah,
adding
yeah.
that space. My bad.
No problem. No problem. Okay, cool. So that was it. Does it works for everybody else? Okay, cool. Okay. Now let's create a new class. Call this one practice with a public static void main. Practice. Write a program to accept two numbers from user. Calculate and display their sum. Hint, use modularization. Okay. So let's solve this problem through the process of modularization. So that means I will create one method for input, another method for calculate, okay, and I may have another method for display. So public static integer input so that is to calculate, that is to accept an input. This is to calculate the sum. I'll be fixing a few things around in this example, but for now, let's write these three methods. An input method, a calculate method, and a display method.
I think your mic is muted.
Okay, dude, I was just frantically checking all my audio settings real quick.
Oh,
Yeah, I
thank you.
can't hear you.
Sorry. So what I was saying that I want only one line in the main. And I want the entire process to be done. Only one line in the main, and I want the entire process to be done. So in order to do that, I may take a same approach that I took in the previous example is I would call sum. And the two parameters will actually be two calls to the input. So what will happen here is this input will call the input and the value will come sitting in its place. Then this input will call the input and the value will going to come in its place. Once both values are filled, then the sum will be called. And the two values will then be passed into N1 and N2. As a result, the total will be the sum of those two values. Now I have to take my process from there on to the next step. That I want somehow the total to make its way into display. And there are many ways of doing it. But one of the ways to do that would be to make the display, take a parameter, and we'll display that parameter, and sum, as soon as it is done adding the numbers, it can call the display and pass the number over. So in this solution, as you can see, main only initiates one thing, which is call to the sum. And everything happens all the way through. So this example pretty much shows me then main calls one method and that method calls another method. So I can have a trail of method calls just like that. And when method calls take place, they usually take place in a stack. So at the top of the stack, you always have a method running. And then if that method calls another method, the top method goes down the stack. So when main calls sum, then main comes down one level and sum is at the top of the stack. When sum calls input, then input is at the top of the stack, sum is one level below, and main is E1 a level below. Okay. Then what happens? Input is done. Again, sum comes back in the first spot, main comes in the second spot, then sum calls the next input. Again, input comes up the stack, sum goes in the second spot, and main goes in the last spot. This is how in memory it maintains which methods are running right now. When line number 9 is done and you have made a call to line number 21, now input doesn't exist anymore. Sum is running the memory and main is right here. And this spot is empty. Then sum does its job and sum makes a call to display. When sum makes a call to display, then display is at the top of the stack. Sum is right below that, and main is right below that. When display completes its execution, then display goes back to sum and say, well, do you have anything else to run? So when display is done, the sum says, nope, I don't have anything else to do. And so sum goes back to main, and main, since that's the only line, is at the top of the stack. And since that is the only line, then main is pushed off the stack and the application comes to an end. So all your method calls are maintained in a stack, and that's how the computer remembers which methods are still in memory and which methods are not in memory. Okay. Now let's try to run this. Enter a number, enter another number, and here you go. Give me a green check from like if you're done, and then we will start modifying this example. Okay, JC. Okay, cool. Now, what is the point of N1? You'll be like, it holds an input and returns it on the next line. Again, this is a waste of memory. You could just simply replace that with a returns instruction and get rid of the N1 altogether. So what this function does, it asks a user for a number. As soon as the user puts that number in, it just takes the number to the caller. So unnecessary. Similarly, on line number 21, what is the whole purpose of total? To hold the number for one line and then give it over to somebody else? Waste of memory. Just simply take your calculations inside the display method call. So it will first add the numbers together. Once the numbers are added, we'll then pass it over to display. The display will display it. So just to save more memory, we can eliminate those variables which are unnecessary. They're only there for one line and that's it. So now let me rerun this example. So enter a number, enter another number, and here I have an output in lesser lines of code, in a fewer lines of code. Any questions? I hope, Ethan, your brain is not overheating anymore.
It's been cooling down a little bit.
So guys, go ahead and look at this week's homework assignments problem. And I gave you a problem directly from the book, right from the book. I want you to have a look at that problem that I've assigned you. I've only assigned you one problem. So if you go under the unit number 2, that's where you can find it. Read the problem and let me know if you have any questions about the problem statement. So everybody is okay with that problem? Okay. As long as you got it.
Like what we just did.
So again, Alvin?
Kind of seems like what we just did.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I mean, I don't want to give you something for homework that we did not do in class.
Yeah.
So yeah, cool, awesome. So work on this, and then you also have a quiz for a review for the first 2 chapters. So those are the 2 activities that you will be working on during this week for this class. So last week we only had an assignment. This week you have an assignment as well as a quiz. And if you do not have any more questions for me, then we will call it a night.
I just have one about our first assignment.
Yes, Nathan, go ahead.
So first off, you just want the screenshots zipped along with the
Yes.
files?
Yes.
All right. And for the files, do you just want the .java or like the
Yes.
whole?
.java is fine.
All right.
Anybody else has any questions? Otherwise, you're free to go.
Yeah, have a good one.
Our assignment is
everyone.
on page 112 in the book. I think I see it.
Yeah, it's right. It's problem number 11. It's problem number 11 on page 112.
Like about the book billing stuff.
So go to the end of the chapter number 3, where it says programming exercises. You just start scrolling down, and it is the last problem.
Oh, okay. I think I have a different book.
Oh, you do not have the Java programming like textbook 10th edition? Are you using an older edition?
I might be. I'm using a different edition, I think.
Oh, yeah, then probably, it'll be, that's why, I mean, like, yeah, I mean, like, if you're using a different edition, you won't even have a few chapters that we have in the book.
Yeah, that's a problem.
So
Okay,
you,
perfect. I got it.
okay, cool.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too. Thank
Alrighty,
you.
have a good night. Thanks.
You too. Thanks. Bye.
Have a good night, sir.
You too. Thank you. How did it go, Desmond?
Hmm?
How did it go? You blended okay tonight with this class, with this group?
Yeah, I'm gonna rewatch. Yeah, the group is fine. I'm gonna rewatch the videos, and I fell behind a couple times, but I know it wasn't too far behind, and I didn't want to slow anybody down, so I'll just rewatch the video and catch up and finish up the exercise, and then I'll be ready to do the homework.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Thank
So
you.
it's good that you do record these things. It's good that Gateway does that, so that